Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of everyone's favourite literary breakdown. It's Big Bad Books. My name is Declan. Across from me, it's Isaac. He's doing a little wave.
Hi.
That's in a way just for me, but it's to all of you.
It's an audio wave, and I hope you've picked up on it at home. Hope you're doing well, everyone. Loving books.
Go on.
Loving books is a new thing we can say, though.
Sorry, books, yes. We're big fans. Are you bringing that to the mainstream? Or
It's going to be on our merch. It's going to be on our show. It's going to be on our radar.
Coming to a pillow near you. It's been, I won't say a long while, but it's been a little while since last we were together recording the Big Bad Books, thinking about, either the Gulag or indeed the Ready Player 2 verse. Has it become part of your life in any way? Do you think about it as you fall asleep, as you wake up, as you go about your daily business?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I'm going to say no. I'm really good. Like, that's no reflection on the quality of the books
Right,
we're reading,
okay,
but
good.
I'm just one of those sort of compartmentalists, is what I call myself.
Right.
And so I try to keep. You don't want to enjoy something all the time, or it might start to lose its texture. And so I don't want to keep chewing over Klein's prose in my mind. So really, the only time I ever think about it is the hour or so that we record the podcast, and then I kind of actively jettison it from my mind and consciousness.
Do you think that is a sort of a sad commentary on how art, you're not allowing art into your heart, really? I think maybe as a podcasting experiment, here's what we're going to do.
Okay, go on.
After today's episode,
you're going to think
no
about
compartmentalizing.
Or loads.
For the next 2 weeks, you need to be thinking about it.
I think you said this is what we're going to do, so I'm just wondering what you're going to be doing as well.
Well, no, I already do. It already stays with me. Yeah,
Go on, share some thoughts that you've had about Ready Player 2 in the intervening period.
The other day, I was trying to use my laptop.
Oh yeah, that's a technology.
Exactly right, and it wasn't doing what I wanted.
Oh god!
And I thought that's very much like Anorak, who's he's come back as all bad now.
Oh, I see. That is,
and he's not doing what they want him to do.
Right?
Because remember he was supposed to delete himself.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
Yeah,
and that's very much like my laptop. That I was asking it to do something and it was not.
Okay.
And I was like, wow.
That does seem like very...
for a moment, I was as one with Wade.
I see you as quite Wade-like in most ways.
Actually, it's interesting because that's why it was such an interesting thing, because we're nothing alike.
It's not what me and the listeners think, but that's fine. Speaking of Wade, I think we should just wade back into some of what was going on
look at you.
in the previous chapter. And let me remind you, it sort of amounted to nothing. It's not even less than the sum of its parts. It's that there weren't really any parts to sum together. It was like looking at a sort of mishmash of just shapes that had nothing to do with each other.
As I recall, the previous 2 chapters have been set on the planet Sherma. It's all about John Hughes movies.
It is, yeah. And if you're a big fan of John Hughes, you're going to be loving these chapters. And if you're anything less than a huge Hughes fan, then they are, let me tell you, some of the dullest you will ever read. And I'm sorry to say, having now reached the end of this chapter, 0016, it's not. I thought they were going to wrap it up here, but there's another Sherma chapter to come.
Are you joking?
There's another...
Nothing's happened in the previous 2, and yet... Does anything happen in this one? The most that's happened was Art 3 Miss decapitated someone, but then it didn't really seem to matter. Everyone was just like, "Oh, okay."
He dropped those gold coins in the way that you would.
He dropped his loot as all 80s high schoolers did when you decapitated them.
It is bold though, and I think that's really the only, because I've been scraping the bottom of the barrel to find some kind of theme to tie these ones together, because there's just so little to work with here.
Yeah.
I think maybe today's theme is going to be something like real estate, like 4 chapters of this book.
Is real estate a theme?
Yeah, it is. Thank you for asking.
It feels less like a theme.
Let me clarify.
More like a profession.
I don't mean it in the literal sense. I mean metaphorically, how much of the real estate of the novel has been given over to Sherma, Illinois, Shermaville, whatever the planet is called.
Yeah,
and it is actually wild. Like, one thing, for all of its, some have called them flaws in Ready Player One, it certainly did quite a good job of pinballing between many different references and different categories of reference. So if you loved war games, then Bully for you.
Well, there was a great
You've got a whole
chapter just for
reenactment.
you.
But if you loved Pac-Man, then yeah, great, there's that as well. And he had a series of different things. Whereas in this one, it feels like the only thing so far has been Sega Ninja Princess, and
no one
John
knew.
Hughes. And the John Hughes thing it's let's be honest, it's dragging at this stage. If it
It's
wasn't
very
already,
dry as well.
it is just so far it has just been a list of, and I feel stupid pointing this out because of course it has, because it's Ernest, but it has just been a list of things that are John Hughes related that don't have anything to do with the plot.
It's actually been almost less than that. It's just been a list of the characters.
Yeah, don't forget who played them as well, which is quite interesting.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
don't forget when the same character.
Sorry, and not just interesting, but it adds a certain something, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, what does it add out of interest?
Well, it's a sort of a je ne sais quoi, isn't it?
Fair. Well, look, let's dive in. The recap of the chapter is Artemis decoded the riddle, decapitated a man, and then ran off. And I'll just, because we enjoyed it so much the first time, I'm just going to give you the end of the last chapter.
And
Jake Ryan.
So it's about recasting the foul.
Except the foul,
and there was
even
a
though
spelling error there, wasn't there?
Yeah, well, it's a mystery. It's a puzzle technique that we call lying.
Right, I see.
To the solver.
Yeah.
FOWL, because there's a character called like Ducky Duck Man or some shit. Jake Ryan, she said, if you spot Ian or Max, I need you to restrain both of them and then call me. If I spot them at Stubby's, I'll do the same. Okie dokie, ogie dogie. I grinned and replied, okie dokie, doggy daddy.
What is this?
I don't know, but I just wanted to set the scene.
Say it again.
Okie dokie. Maybe it's oggy doggy, but it's AUGIE, like an auger.
Orgy.
It's got a rhyme. It was AUGI doggy.
I was going to Google it, but you do it.
It is. They're Hanna-Barbera characters who debuted on the Quick Draw McGraw show. I'm still not quite sure what the pronunciation was, but he was voiced by Dawn Butler.
Tell me what they look like.
High-spirited pups motivated by ambition. That's a really good thing to be motivated by. I'm jealous.
Wow.
But look, let's leave those dogs in the yard and get on to 0016. Here we go.
Sorry, yeah.
The front yard looked like a war zone. Teenagers were milling around in the yard and the street. It's good to say yard twice in the same two sentences. Leaning on vintage Porsches, Ferraris, and Transams, dancing, drinking, and making out. It's proper teen vibes, isn't it? That's what it was like.
That's what it was. We were always in the yard.
Yeah. Now they've split up to go and search for these important characters, and Wade's gone one way, and the way he's gone is going to prove to have been completely fruitless. Quite soon.
You're joking.
I walked up to the front door and pressed the doorbell. Now this is surprising. A loud gong sounded, bong, as it swung inward. A young Asian man was hanging from the inside of the door. I don't think it means it's unfortunate wording, but he is alive.
Okay. That's
he
good.
was extremely intoxicated. It took me a second to realize I knew him. It was, I'm sorry in advance, everyone, it was Long Duck Dong, Gede Watanabe's infamous character from 16 Candles.
Of course.
What's happening, hot stuff, he said, speaking with a thick accent that Isaac will not recreate on air. When I failed to answer, the donger motioned for me to come on inside. Now, I looked this up because I haven't seen 16 Candles, and I understand that it's a heavily criticised racist Asian stereotype character who's super horny.
I haven't seen the movie, but I do know of
Long Duck Dong. I'm sorry to hear that. And it's curious because, he does point out that it's an infamous character, but he does also include it. Like it's weird he didn't need to bring in this sort of racist character.
There's probably a sentence there though where he says like, it was a shame that he had been portrayed this way.
Let me see. But Control F. Shame. No, there's not so much of that. And also, there's not really a sentence here where he does anything that only this character could have done as well. So it's like, it was needless, is what I'm saying.
No, but he's probably important to the rest of the chapter.
Maybe. I mean, not this one right now, but maybe in a subtextual sense. Maybe he'll come back at the end and we'll be like, there'll be the final battle with Anorak.
Hang on a minute. Long Duck Dong recast the foul.
Yes, I think you might be onto something there.
Oh my god!
You might be more in tune with the riddle than Ernest himself, because I don't think that proves relevant. Anyway, they go inside the house. he's looking for someone. I forget who. I just made my way back to the living room. He does like a circuit of this whole house looking for these characters, Ian and Max. I just made my way back to the living room when I received a text from Art3Miss on my HUD telling me to meet her at Stubby's house next door in the backyard.
A text. And so, it doesn't have its own message.
Well,
I received a textular HUD info from Art3Miss.
No, this is old school. But it's good that 2 pages in, he's just like, well, actually, I was looking around and then I got a text that said, "Come over here anyway. This was pointless excursion." It's nice that the text sort of knows it's pointless.
You've got to reach your word limit, though, haven't you?
In Stubby's backyard, I found Art3Miss holding 2 extremely handsome teenage boys at gunpoint. Ian and Max from Weird Science.
Oh, dear. Oh, no.
Max was played by the actor. This is a lot of fun to read.
I don't think that's allowed in the Oni.
No. It's Artemis is doing it, though.
No, but Wade's the one who said they're very, attractive.
Well, Wade has been on some learning and growing shit for the last...
a real journey.
Wade's in his bi era. Max was played by the actor Robert Rusler, whom I also knew from his role as Ron Grady in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge.
That's just what I was about to say. I can't believe that you beat me to it.
But it's interesting to include that, isn't it? Like, that's the key thing.
It adds texture to the character.
Yeah. And Ian was played by an impossibly young Robert Downey Jr. Holy shit, I said. The OG Iron Man. I forgot he was in a John Hughes movie. Which is quite exciting, because if you think about it, Iron Man for Wade is in the far-flung past, but for us, it's only the recent past.
It's only just happened. The Iron Man only just was.
It goes to show, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The way time can be.
Yeah. And also, it's kind of a novel moment because it's Wade admitting that he forgot a reference. He forgot that he was in this.
That is unusual.
So that's some weakness there. I think
it is some Wade
Can we call that character development?
You could call it him being cucked by Pulp Fiction.
Right, yeah. Well, we could call it that instead, yeah.
Now, Artemis has got an assault rifle aimed at both of these boys, handsome boys' heads, but she lets one of them go because it turns out he was irrelevant to the planet. I think that was just recreational abducting on her part.
That was just to give Wade something to do because he's been so fucking useless.
She offers the big bag of weed that she took from Bender's locker in the last chapter to Robert Downey Jr.'s character, whose name I can't recall. Ian, I think he's called. And she's like, "Do you want this?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I super do because I'm a teen." And she says, "I'll make you a deal," Art3Miss said. "I'll give you this whole bag of doobage," which I really hate.
No.
That's some Chuck Wendig shit.
I am not having that. She does
Skiddly-dabbity doobage.
She does not call it doobage. Yeah.
"If you just perform 2 simple tasks for me." "Sure," Ian said, batting his eyelashes at her. "Anything you say, doll." Now, this is really good. This has a lot of... It's kind of a world-building thing, but it reveals a lot about Artemis's character, because so far, she's always cast as kind of the good one. Like, she's well-behaved, she's sensible, she's moral, where other characters are not. But tell me what you make of this.
Come on.
"I figured out this little trick by playing through all the official Weird Science quests," Artemis said. "The NPC recreations of Max and Ian are both total hedonists, and they'll perform nearly any task in exchange for sex or drugs. Isn't that right, Ian?" Now, what does that mean to you?
What it means to me is that Art3Miss has been fucking this boy silly.
It does sound that way, doesn't it?
It does. It sounds exactly like
she's been going there. Quest?
She's been going there, taking the same bag of doobage out of the locker every other weekend, coming to find little Robert Downey Jr.
Baby RDJ.
And having him pump her silly for it.
And does that strike you as what would feature in one of the official quest lines in Shermer, Illinois Planet? Or do you think this is like
It sounds like something I wouldn't... That Ernest himself has only dared write because John Hughes is dead.
Yeah, that's true. If he were alive and litigious, you probably wouldn't be saying
you probably wouldn't say
my characters fuck
birthmarked
teens. There's a bit... I don't know what the age situation is here, but haven't they grown up a bit? Aren't they like adults now, Wade and
It's
Wade
about
and
like,
Co?
maybe, is it like 4 or 5 years later?
It was enough time that the whole of the fucking like Oni project was developed and launched and stuff. And they were already, I don't know, it felt like they were about 17, 18 in the last one. So I don't know. I don't know if she should be fucking a teen robot.
are we saying that there's a problematic age gap here?
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it?
She's cancelled as fuck.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to do it, but sometimes you've got to. Now, RDJ, he can't stop batting his eyelids, but he's like, sure, I'll do it. And she gets out some shoes and a tie, and he puts them on, and then bang, he's transformed. He no longer looks like the weird science Ian. He now looks like Robert Downey Jr. in Back to School in the role of Derek Lutz. But he was dressed in the same vintage suit that John Cryer wore in the original ending of Pretty in Pink, if that alleviates any problems and tension.
Well, it's like it's the dual imagery, isn't it? Of course, it is it's only the one image because it's the same suit.
Yeah,
but it's from two movies, meaning that the suit is twice as interesting.
So it's a double reference, I suppose.
Yeah, sort of. Not in a way that I personally have any sort of emotional attachment to. And
maybe you didn't hear me. He looks like he's in the role of Derek Lutz.
Derek Lutz.
Yeah, I thought you must have missed that.
Sorry, I did. No,
that's fine.
If I may revise my previous statement, this is the most important chapter in literary history.
Yeah, it's touching. Now, there's a lot. You remember in the last chapter, he forgot about needle drops. Well, he remembered in this one because they're coming thick and fast, I have to say.
Oh, here we go. Thank goodness.
There is the song I Want a New Drug by Huey Lewis and the News, but actually the lyrics kick in and he realizes it's Weird Al Yankovic's parody, I Want a New Duck. It only plays for 4 or 5 seconds. And then Robert Ducky Jr., he writes, does a little dance and says, I am the Duck Man or something like that. So that's quite good, isn't it? That's fun. Interesting that the coders of the world knew that this could happen. They knew that you could give Robert Downey Jr. a bunch of doobage and then chuck some shoes on the boy and he'd turn into Derek Lutz.
It would be like a little hypnotist thing where he'd suddenly think he's a duck.
It's weird, isn't it?
And do a little dance for you.
That's basically,
and also like let you suck him off.
Robert Downey Jr. was originally supposed to play the role of Ducky, Artemis explained, but the studio decided to cast John Cryer in the role instead. And so that's interesting. As Wade sort of reminds, he says, really, I never knew that. Pretty impressive, Artie.
For me, the most entertaining thing about this chapter is that every time they say John Cryer, I think of Barry Cryer.
Yeah, Barry Cryer was
which is a much more interesting recasting for this movie.
Recast the file brackets as Barry Cryer. Now, the time has come for a little bit of rethinking about the riddle, which you'll remember. I recited the inscription again, this time from memory. Recast the foul, restore his ending. Andy's first fate still needs mending. So that was Andy's first fate, I said, to wind up with RDJ as Ducky. And the only way to mend that fate is to recast the foul. I smiled at Art 3mess and shook my head. Artie, you're a genius. And I gave her a round of applause.
Has he owned... A one-man round of applause is a very funny idea.
And she bows, which is really good as well.
So has he only just realised that's what she's doing?
I think so, yeah. Even though I'm pretty sure we had one of these moments where he sort of spelled it all out for us in the last chapter.
He literally said that in the last chapter.
Yeah, but maybe this time it means so much more. I can't say why or how.
Do you think that he designed this book to be read one chapter every fortnight?
I don't think he designed this book to be read.
It is, yeah. It's something of a boondoggle, isn't it? It's just like it was written only so that it may have been made into a movie.
Exist. Yeah,
yeah.
It could have been an empty cover that when you open it is just a cinema ticket to go and see it 4 years later.
It's just a lot of Wikipedia links.
Yeah. So it's really exciting, isn't it? They deliberate about what car they're going to drive in because they've got to go to the dance or some shit. And they're like, wouldn't we get there faster in a Ferrari? And he points to the Ferrari from Ferris Bueller, but she's like, no, we can't do that. So it was just there to sort of remember what that was like. Enjoyable, I think. Now, already we're at the halfway point in this chapter, so I think it's time for some interstish.
Oh, well.
If you'll be so kind.
And what a chapter we've had here in the Gulag Caledonia. You'll remember from last time, of course.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I won't remember is God.
Who?
The face of Jay.
I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is.
You wouldn't.
Now, David, who's our main character, whose name I've forgotten. I think it's Campbell.
Yeah,
yes,
it is.
I think it is Campbell. It's not David Scott.
No, it's not.
Although in a much more important way, it is. So in the previous chapter, he was on his way to the Department of Work and Well-being. He had a sort of fascistic appointment to, lest we forget, discuss his doobie. Not his not his
His
doobage,
doobage.
not his doobage, his doobie, his digital universal basic income, which
is
just
bad,
as a reminder to you all is bad. That's
Yeah.
We get off to a fucking flying start in chapter 2. The bus arrived at the Department of Work and Wellbeing on Hamza Yusuf Avenue. Now, I thought, before I even looked at the parentheses afterwards, I thought, that's quite specific.
Yeah, it is.
And so I had a little Google of the name, and Hamza Yusuf is a Scottish politician serving as Cabinet Secretary for Health and Social Care. And he's the first non-white and first Muslim cabinet minister in the Scottish government. So just bear that in mind.
Okay. So this is like a good avenue about representation.
Yeah, well, it's Hamza Yusuf Avenue, a politician from the 2020s who ushered in the most draconian and abusable hate crime / thought crime laws in the democratic world.
Wow. No way.
Yeah.
Did he do that? Did you come across that in your research?
Listen, I'll just read the facts.
Okay. Yeah.
One of his flagship policies was the Hate Crime and Public Order Bill, which he promised would streamline existing legislation and add protections to persecuted minorities while maintaining rights to freedom of speech and freedom of expression.
Oh, no.
I know.
Not a nice middle ground solution.
You'd hate that. So, yeah, that's a shame, isn't it?
For sure.
I wonder why Dr. Bruce Scott has a problem with this law.
Maybe he doesn't. Maybe this is just fiction. Maybe this is just the authorial voice.
I see. Well, we'll see about that. There's something interesting coming up in this chapter.
Okay.
A surprising twist.
Here's a twist. I've got to answer the door.
But before we get to such a twist, we have the introduction of what I'm going to call sort of a theme for this episode. Or for this chapter at least, which is that he's arrived there at 9:50 a.m., which he says is plenty of time to empty his bowels, which were now rumbling and telling him a shit was impending.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting thing to have to include, because they often, I don't know, it's kind of fatuous criticism I've always thought, but sometimes people are like, well, but when does Iron Man take a piss?
Yeah.
Or like, when does Harry Potter, have a shower?
Yeah.
I guess some people would say it's too boring to know about.
When does David Campbell take a dump?
Yeah, when are his bowels telling him stuff, and what are they? What's the contents of
what
exactly
are they telling him?
Yeah. Oh, that's really good to know. It's the attention to detail, isn't it?
That's exactly it. It makes him a real character, a relatable presence. Yeah. So the building itself is, you wouldn't believe it, it's an imposing square concrete building.
Not brutalism, is it?
He doesn't say so, but I can imagine. Yeah. It's probably very Soviet looking,
Oh, I'm certain of it.
At the back entrance to the cube, which is what he's calling the building, reminiscent, he says, of the Star Trek Generation Borg cube.
Is this Ready Player 2 shit?
There are some real references here,
he's
aren't there?
Stepping on Klein's territory here.
But at the back entrance was a delivery access for tradesmen and the like.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Just like in Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the Borg.
You're always getting the plum around.
They're always having like the fucking UPS guy dropping shit off. However, he says more sinister than that is that there were cells for holding people who became rowdy or violent or were deemed in need of state intervention. And basically what it is, they could send you to sort of like a labor camp, basically.
Like a doobie gulag.
A bit like that. A little bit like what happened to the characters in the works of Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
Okay, I'm not familiar. Yeah. Not familiar with that one.
But yeah, so he then concludes that section by saying that the human labor was also a bonus to run the New Age ecological religion, which, disguised as altruism to Mother Earth, was an excellent way to control human beings.
Ooh.
Then this next bit is one of my favorites. It really tickled me because obviously, although both Dr. Bruce Scott and David Campbell are wrong, about pretty much everything they believe and all their concerns.
Well,
their concerns they're quite profound, aren't they? Even if they're misguided, they're about things like, the murder of God and the freedom of the right to exist and to be as a liberated person, an emancipated human. But then, as the sort of like reactionaries can't, but help themselves, David's got some other smaller concerns here. So all pockets, he's going through an X-ray machine on his way in. It says all pockets had to be emptied and shoes, belts, and other metal objects had to be removed. David found a tray and emptied his pockets. The contents included his wallet with credit cards and some cash, which was hardly used or accepted in any outlet or shop nowadays.
Oh, you're joking.
No.
Like when you bring Scottish money back across the border and they're like, we don't take that. Well, it's legal tender, sir. Yeah. I think you'll know through. I bet he's always making that argument.
Yep, he's always doing that. He only carries Scottish notes.
Sorry to bring it back to this, but has he had a shit yet? Or
you're going to regret asking me.
Is it Chekhov's bowel movement?
You're going to really regret asking me about that. So he goes through this little X-ray machine. He gets inside, and he's still doing that, because after talking about the cash, he goes on for a page and a half about how you're sort of chipped.
Oh yeah, of course.
Obviously. Then he says that there's he gets to the actual machine itself, and a stern-looking but attractive, heavily tattooed and pierced blonde woman in her 30s beckoned him forward to the X-ray scanner. So she barked to him to put his arms above his head and stay like that until the green light in front of him flashed. And David, being the revolutionary that he is,
gets his dick out.
Did as he was told and then exited the port.
Oh, wow. Get him, Dave.
But now, get this. I mean, sometimes some authors, and I mean, Ernest certainly is one of these.
Yeah.
If there's a piece of imagery, like a metaphor, they just let it sit. It's yours, the reader's
to do
opportunity, the privilege to interpret. Dr. Bruce Scott goes a different way. In case you miss the imagery, he tells you what it is.
Okay, that's an interesting technique.
The bull ring piercing through her septum in her nose was very commonplace as a fashion accessory. It was highly aggressive and symbolic of being a cog in a chain, which is not where cogs go. A mere
and also not what they look like. They don't have a bull ring on them.
No, a mere tool for the smooth, efficient running of the state machine. Nothing but a mark of livestock, embraced and celebrated by so many.
Wow. Fuck. Yeah. That's damning, isn't it?
I know.
Does she know that?
A minute ago, he said that she was quite attractive, but
stern but attractive.
Exactly. So he picks up his stuff and he gets into the elevators. Now, you might be wondering what the elevators in this building were like.
Well, I hope there's a loo in there, because his bowels must be brimming over.
Well, let me tell you, the elevators in this building were fast, furious, and frightening.
Yeah. That's some Sean Penn shit. Wow.
It is real Bob Honey.
Alliteration king.
Yeah. He tells you all about what the different floors are for.
Great.
But
are you skipping that bit?
I'm going to gloss over that page and a half, just because. It is very dull. It's actually even more dull than the rest of it. Apparently, on the top of the room, the top of the building, there's a helicopter pad.
Oh,
but
good.
He doesn't really say for what. Then comes the inevitable. He spied the signs for the toilets in the far left-hand corner of the waiting room. He was getting desperate. His bowels were churning, and it was
like a buttermill.
And it was getting close.
Yeah. D-Day.
Yeah. All toilets were gender neutral, as no distinction was made on biological sex in most contexts in society. Oh, yeah. On entering the toilet, there were no urinals. Public urinals have been banned in Scotland since 2023, as those is power felt that urinals were male-centric and that everybody should piss sitting down, which is such an amazing thing. I love the idea of someone of like the equalities minister making the point that everybody should piss sitting down specifically.
Yeah.
I mean, why should a man be allowed the patriarchal privilege of pissing standing up with no shame in front of other people? Men would have to wait for a free cubicle like everybody else, and he would have to sit and submit like everybody else. Like sitting
Sorry,
down
one quick question. You don't have to sit to piss into a toilet, do you? The law isn't following you in there, as far as David has made clear. Does he not know about this though? Like that seems like a category error.
Yeah.
We should send him a little gif also, of someone explaining.
Also the idea that like to sit down and take a piss is an act of submission. Like to piss standing up would be defiance.
Yeah.
So then he says the ban on urinals was also justified in terms of public health as a good way of stopping the spread of disease. And then he doesn't comment on that.
All right. Well, I guess he's saying, it's 1 for and 1 against.
Then we come to the most important.
I wonder why we need to have this bit described. I wonder why we need this.
Listen, well, I'm afraid, Isaac, you asked, and so you're going to get it. He tried all 10. I'm just going to read this page uninterrupted. He tried all 10 cubicle doors, but they were engaged. Shit, he muttered, hoping for some relief soon.
It's a pun.
Luckily, one of the doors opened, and he was greeted with a huge hulk of a woman in a yellow floral pattern summer dress and ginger curly hair. The woman, in scare quotes, smiled at David as she exited the cubicle. The cubicle toilet bowl resembled a sewage overspill nightmare. The unflushed turd and brown water lurking in that toilet made David feel like vomiting. But sit down he did as he let his bowels empty like a champion. The relief was exhilarating. His joy
hard as a rock.
Soon turned to disgust when he looked over to his left to grab the toilet paper when he saw that there was very little left on the roll on the holder.
Not none.
She could have warned me, he thought. Luckily, there was just enough toilet paper left.
Oh,
so
perfect.
That bit of jeopardy instantly gone.
Yeah, that's
He
good.
quickly exited the cubicle without flushing as the handle was broken and washed his hands in the sink. Fortunately, there was a full soap dispenser.
This guy is a monster. Why did he write that? Like, no one needed it, did they? It has nothing to do with his book.
I've not read much Solzhenitsyn myself, but is there a lot of graphic defecation in there, do you think?
Feces, yeah.
He's just writing in the style of his heroes.
It's really upsetting to hear about. Like, there was a lot too much time spent on it.
What was your favourite line, if I can
none
ask?
of them. None of them, really.
Well, let me give you some options. Did you like the line, the unflushed turd and brown water lurking in the toilet?
I specifically hated that one.
Did you like the line, he let his bowels empty like a champion?
That one is very funny. What on earth does he mean? A champion of what? A champion shitter? There's no tournament scene for
There's
that.
nothing else that it could be.
Is he saying in the future that you get an award based on how quickly, how efficaciously you evacuate?
One of the little chips in his body makes a little record of it.
Ding dong! Well done, David.
It gives him another £2.33 a week on his doobie.
His social credit goes up because he shits so well. Yeah, that's terrible.
Okay, so he puts his ID card on a little thing, and then it gives him a ticket like you might get at the butcher's or something. It says 281. And he looks up to see the number counters dotted around the room, and his heart sinks because it's only on 253.
That's not that far.
It's not that far. And then he says this as if this is, some sort of like...
Should have got his number before he went to go shit like champion as well, shouldn't he? Dickhead.
And then he says this as if this is some sort of like dystopia. A 9:30 a.m. appointment normally meant that you'd be seen 30 minutes later, sometimes longer.
Wow, 30. Goodness.
No, 30 whole minutes.
Terrible.
So he looks to his right and he sees what he describes as a real gaggle of unfortunates. He says there's 4 men and a woman. Well, David could, in his mind, categorize them as men and women, but he would have been very wary of vocalizing it out loud. Referring to biological sex was potentially a hate crime
you mentioned
in Scotland. Yeah. The demonization of using biological sex first started in the schools around 2019, where pupils were expelled and or refused entry to school if they did not adhere to the gender ideology that was forced into them.
Really?
Well, it really says that. Obviously, that's not true.
But it's not really true.
No, it's not really true, yeah. So he then goes on about how women are erased. It's illegal to be critical of transfeminism. Anyway, then he ends with this fantastic sentence that actually does kind of set the tone for the end of this chapter, which is the sort of weird twist here, which is that in spite of all of this, he is aware of this fact. It says, whatever the gender of David's companions in the waiting room, they all looked as miserable as he did. They, like him, were all waiting for their interrogation. So he is aware of the fact that actually none of that shit matters. No. And actually you're all people who are in the same spot.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we all need a doobie.
Then he says that there's a beep that signals that, the count has changed a fair bit. And everyone looked up, and now it's on 264. Then he says there was no rhyme or reason to the count and how it reduced. But it has gone up.
Yeah.
Which you would expect it to do.
You ideally would, yeah.
Yeah. Hold on to that thought.
Okay.
Then he says, at this point, what appeared to be a middle-aged, Middle Eastern-looking woman with a headscarf exited the interview room. The woman was crying and muttering to herself in a foreign tongue. No doubt the interview had gone badly. David felt anger rising in him and pity for the woman and her children. Most probably she and her family had come to Scotland to start a new life after Western nations had gutted her country of origin, then invited her with open arms to settle in their lands as humanitarian repatriation. Some welcome that was.
Wow. David.
Now,
that's unusual, isn't it?
Very unusual, given them. Just some 6 pages ago, he was having a go at Hamza Yusuf, and his avenue. Then there's
Maybe
funny.
He's changing.
Well, this is it. So he basically says that we're basically the same, aren't we?
Yeah.
He does take it too far, which we'll get to in a second. He does also, in a very funny way, refer to it as the Scythian struggle to get through it all.
Oh no,
it's just very funny. But then he says, so he's like, we're both just trying to get by. We're both just trying to do this. We're basically the same person. Both his and her traditions, heritage and backgrounds were nothing but a distant memory for both of them. Now, tell me if you think that there's a bit of a false equivocation here. She and her family had been forcibly uprooted from her homeland by war and economics. Similarly, David had had his Scottishness erased and outlawed by successive governments, pushing a social justice, cultural Marxist agenda.
Similarly is the fucking funniest word you could possibly use there.
It's doing an awful lot of heavy lifting. And in much the same way, David wasn't allowed wasn't allowed to say the N-word at his job anymore.
He couldn't shout haggis from his bedroom window, lest the woke police come and throw him in the gulag.
Similarly, David had forgotten God.
It's really good. That's really bad.
Not good. So he does that. Then like after all of this, it says David watched the struggling woman and her 2 children walk off towards the elevators, huffing and puffing. In his mind, he wished her well.
Well, I mean, it would be weird to wish her well out loud, apropos of nothing. But
she was as much a victim in this as he was.
It's great.
Some would say more.
Well,
some would say more.
Similar struggle, as he's explained so elegantly. I think we have to agree.
Now then, tell me about this. A flurry of beeps rang through the waiting room. David looked up and saw that several numbers were shown on the counter: 259, 260. 261, 262,
that's numbers.
263, and 264.
Oh, good.
David's heart missed several beats when he saw his number appear on the counter.
Right.
Because he's very anxious.
Oh, really?
And then he says he'd probably put that down to anxiety, but then they might have a go at him for being unstable if he says that he's anxious.
Lose with these people.
Unfortunately, at the end of this chapter, I think he thinks it's a little more dramatic. than it is, because he just gets up, and then there's a sign that says "Go to room 32," and he walks along to a beige door with the number 32 in the center of the door,
And then what happens?
and he knocks, and a voice shouted from the other side, "Come in."
And then what happens?
And then that's the end of the chapter.
No, you're
That's
joking.
it. He
Oh
leaves
my
us
God,
hanging.
Tenterhooks, absolutely.
Yeah. So
what a chapter.
lots of questions for next week. Is David's, love of other races going to be maintained? What will the interview be like? Will he have to shit again?
Yeah.
All
Is it
this
an
and
irritable
more.
bowel syndrome situation that's going to be a recurring thorn in his bowel throughout? I guess we'll find out in future
We'll
episodes.
find
Now,
out
one
next
sort of
time.
admin question that I guess
go
we
on.
could talk about off air. Will we have to know all of what happens in Gulag Caledonia? Because I remember back in the old days, you'd sometimes have different interstitial content, and it seems like I know you love this book, and
Yeah.
we obviously how many chapters is it? Just out of interest,
Not
Is
sure.
it lots?
We're on page 37 of 234.
Jesus, so it's a long one. They've got
yeah.
some depth to that novel.
Yeah, although they're not real pages, so it's not actually that long.
Yeah, I was just wondering like how much more of it you want to get. Like maybe what could be cool. The listeners and I were kind of brainstorming this one.
Go on.
Maybe you read the whole rest of it and then just kind of summarize that next week. It's just one idea, because obviously like there can be too much of David.
Oh, but I'd have to skip.
We don't want
over
him to
so
overshadow
much.
Wade.
I'd have to skip over so much good content.
That would be all right.
I wouldn't want to deny you that. I wouldn't.
No!
What if he has to go for a sit down piss later?
Yeah, it's fine if we
you
don't
miss
know
out
all
on
of
that. No,
I guess
no,
you could
no.
you could write those down and maybe.
If anything, what I'll do is I'll go through sort of half a chapter at a time, just so we can really get into the nitty gritty.
Okay.
Yeah,
get some proper analysis going. All right, let's jump back into. I think we're in a Rolls Royce. It triggers a needle drop as soon as they hop into the Rolls Royce of the Peter Gunn theme, which I believe is from Blue, the Brothers Blue.
That's a good piece of music.
It is, and it's good. Its goodness kind of permeates the text by virtue of being mentioned. I don't know if you had that experience. Like when I read that the needle drop is a piece of music that I know, I'm like, fuck yes, I know that one, and it's a good sounding music. Yeah, see, like look at the fun we're having right now. So they're driving through the moonlit labyrinth of suburban streets. RDJ is in the car with them, and they're all getting like flicked around because Artemis, I don't know if she's driving badly on purpose, but she's fucking about. Wade cracks a little pop culture joke here. He says, "For a few minutes, I felt like we'd be transported into a game of Grand Theft Auto Sherma." That's pretty good, isn't it?
That's funny. That is funny.
She turns onto the highway, and it starts to get a bit smoother. And when they're on the on-ramp, there's only another needle drop. That's 2 needle drops in 2 paragraphs. This time it's Holiday Road by Lindsey Buckingham, or Americans might say Buckingham, which I don't personally fuck with.
That's terrible, isn't it?
Now, I don't know that song, so for me, that needle drop, that was a something of a blank.
I lost interest.
It wasn't for me. But I guess they can't all land for all of us every time, can they? They arrive at this house.
Is it possible for me to still think about the Peter Gunn theme instead?
Not anymore, no, because if you think about it, we've gone past that. That needle drop happened.
Because there wasn't enough time in the reading to get through the whole song.
I'm really sorry about that. No, because what happened was this is maybe on me for not vocalizing this, but there was that star chapter break delineation. There was a time gap maybe. And I suppose that was when you're reading it to yourself, you probably sit there and you maybe even just pull up on Spotify the Peter Gunn theme and have a listen to it.
Probably it's an interactive read for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Now we're at someone's house. I'm not clear who, and I can't say I care a great deal about it, but Harry Dean Stanton's there in a bathrobe.
That's quite cool.
We pause the chapter for a little quiz where Artemis says there are 5 different John Candy NPCs wandering around Sherma. Can you name all of them? And I'll throw that out to you, Declan. Can you name all of them?
No. Thank you for asking.
Maybe let's see how many you can get. We'll give you a point.
I think he was in the National Lampoon Christmas Vacation.
Go on, what was his character?
Yeah, he was the John Candy one.
Mr. Lampoon.
Mr. Animal House himself.
Del Griffith, of course, says Wade. Then there's Chet Ripley. You were probably going to say Chet Ripley, weren't you?
Yeah.
C.D. Marsh.
I wasn't going to say that.
Gus Polinski, The
Probably
poker
not.
king of the Midwest. Oh, and I saw Buck Russell this morning. She grinned at me, impressed. And that's all that happens.
She
there.
wasn't impressed.
Well, she says he's sharp as a tack. So I mean, take that as you will.
Okay, sorry. Well, for having seen the same guy.
But seen and remembered. That's the thing. He remembers
Right,
all
I
the John
see.
Candies. He's got a little folder.
It
in
was
his
only
brain.
today.
I don't know if he's seen them all or if this is just Wade's Hughes knowledge of the Hughes-verse.
Right. Sorry, yeah.
And either way, I'd say it's
He remembered all the
incredibly
John
impressive.
Candies, but he forgot RDJ. I
Well,
don't think so.
You can't cover all bases, can he?
I think he
possibly?
was looking it up on his HUD.
Yeah, he's got Wikipedia open on his HUD. Now there's a really boring bit where they're talking about something I've never heard of. And sorry, that's all of these chapters, but there's a specifically dull bit here. They're talking about an old 96er. Any idea what that might be? I think it's a food. Maybe a burger.
I have no idea.
Maybe it's 96 pounds of meat, which sounds implausible. But they use this not only because it's a reference to some John Hughes thing, which is a lot of fun just on its own, but also you may have got your RP1 gland throbbing when I said old 96er, and Wade points out, he says, you might think I'd be opposed to eating something with the word sixer in its name, but I am not at all.
I think
and Artemis laughs.
I think it's a 96-ounce steak.
Oh, really? How many ounces is, like, what is that in real measurements for real men?
That would be 6 pounds.
I don't know what that is either. I mean grams. 96 ounces is 2.7 kilos of meat. I don't believe anyone's eating that. No one's eating that. It's a lie.
No, I think it's John Candy who's eating it.
Oh, okay.
And he was a big guy.
Artemis, I like this sentence. Artemis laughed her laugh again. And it was music to my ears. Two very vague things. We've described it as music to my ears and just her laugh. When this is over, we're coming back here to chow down, okay? I said. She nodded and said, it's a date. I felt myself turn several different shades of red. Now, this bit's really, really terribly bad.
Oh, no.
What happens is they're driving down the freeway.
Okay.
I think they're in a Rolls Royce, but one where the top appears to go down, which does not mesh with my experience of what a Rolls Royce is like. They're normally like a big Frosties box that's gone a bit off. But this one, the top's down. Artemis is looking fucking hot.
Radiant.
Like, I don't know if that reads. The wind's in her hair. She's probably doing that thing where she's like shakes her hair in the wind.
What's the birthmark situation?
Well, they're in the virtual world, so it's not there. Thank God.
Oh my God. It's prime art 3 minutes.
Actually, I might have to assume that because didn't he make a big deal of the fact that at a certain point after Wade said that he loved her regardless, she put the birthmark onto her avatar? I could be wrong.
Maybe.
But anyway, it might have gone.
It's good that we remembered.
Out of nowhere, so Wade is just looking at her being like, man, she slaps. Out of nowhere, another needle drop triggered and a new song began to play. It was More Than a Feeling by Boston. More Than a Feeling. That one.
Yeah.
And that's just in case you're like, oh, that's just a song. I wonder what it's from. Luckily, it's from She's Having a Baby when Jake falls in love with his future wife, Christy, at first sight.
Hang on.
Now,
hang on.
Go on. Yeah.
So let me just, I need a second.
What have you noticed?
I'm just trying to piece together. So that was from a film, probably, I'm not sure who directed that one.
It's a John Hughes one, actually.
It's a John Hughes?
Yeah,
okay.
it is.
And there was a guy, and while that song is playing, he falls in love with his future wife. Now, Wade is in the car.
Yeah, the Rolls Royce.
He's hearing that song.
Yes.
And he's with Artemis.
Yeah, what's your point?
Who he loves.
Well, it's not his wife, though, is it?
No, but it could be his
it could be a future
wife.
So what Klein is suggesting here is that we can hear wedding bells, we the reader.
Oh, yes.
Do you think this book will end with them getting married in a really traditional service that goes on for about 3 chapters?
Do you think she wears white?
I think she wears a Yoda costume. I think she dresses up as Chewbacca, and it's that scene from the end of Return of the Jedi where they have a big party.
What if she turns up in the robes of Anorak?
Fucking hell. Wade would flip out. Now, when this needle drop moment starts, Artemis just bursts out laughing. She looks over at Wade and she bursts out laughing. And he's like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck is so funny? That song, she replied. It starts to play whenever one... This is so fucking contrived. That song, she replied. It starts to play whenever one avatar stares at another avatar for longer than 5 seconds, while also experiencing a drastic increase in their heart rate. It's a little Easter egg they added for Oni users last year. Great, I muttered. Busted by my own biomonitors. Isn't that just so shit?
That's terrible.
It's really bad. There are so many like
poor.
caveats to when it's triggered. It's like an avatar looks at an avatar for more like if avatar stare equals yes.
If you are having a heart attack and you're leaning to the side looking at someone, the paramedics are going to turn up with more feeling blaring out.
That'd be really good. Now they arrive at the Sherma Hotel, where I think it's prom. I think, if I remember correctly, the whole concept here is they need to get Robert Downey Jr. to go to prom with someone that in the original cut of the film, the duck guy would have gone as, and in the original casting, it would have been Robert Downey Jr. rather than
and Long Duck Dong is with them.
He's
with them there in the car.
Mentioned, no, not at all. Now, it is interesting. It does feel like Klein, I haven't read the next chapter, so maybe it does come back. But he didn't notice, as you pointed out, that the word duck is in Long Duck Dong's, the Donger's name. You would have thought that maybe would have warranted mention as ducks.
Well, maybe they're going to get to the prom and this isn't going to work. And then they realise that it's the Long Duck Dong that they need to recast.
I think it's half true. I think they are going to get to the prom and it's not going to work. But I don't see it developing with the Dongers kind of as a central character.
No.
I could be wrong. So they arrive there, but then RDJ skids to a halt and he's like, I'm sorry, I can't go in there. And she's like, but I gave you the fucking doobage. What are you playing at? And he's like, I know, and I want to help you out, but I can't go in there. Not like this. I wouldn't know what to do or say.
Why is he sounding like this? What happened to RDJ in the past?
It's an interpretation of mine.
I see.
And they're like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, we brought him here. They played the needle drop to kind of signal that we were on the right path. So this is clearly right. And like, we gave him the shoes and then it clicked him into a different costume. We're doing so much right, but something's going awry. RDJ is he says, I'm not emotionally prepared at this juncture.
He's wimping out.
I never know what to say at formal gatherings such as this. Artemis
it's the
gives
prom.
a nod.
You don't have to say anything.
I think this is a little puzzle clue. Possibly, I don't know. He folds his arms and he starts tapping his leg, just like his foot on the floor. And he's just doing that forever now. This is like him in an idle animation.
That's quite horrible.
It's really upsetting, yeah. I think he could lean more into that, but unfortunately he's not interested in the interesting parts of the story.
Oh, that's right.
I turned to Arthurimus. Recast the foul.
What's he listening to while he's tapping his foot? Does it say?
There's not been a needle drop actually recently.
Fuck.
I mean, if someone stares at him and gets their heart up, then it will start playing more on the feeling, but that will ultimately be irrelevant and a distraction. Recast the foul. Restore his ending, I recited. This whole time, we thought the clue meant we were supposed to restore Ducky's ending. But what if restore his ending means we need to restore John Hughes' ending? The ending of Pretty in Pink he originally wrote in his screenplay. I nodded at the RDJ NPC, which I bet he was so happy to write those 6 letters.
Yep.
What if we need to find a copy of the original script and give it to him? Artemis threw up her hands. And how are we supposed to do that? As if that's like any more complicated than anything else that's happened. How
you just that? We've just decapitated
him. I smiled at her. We go to the writer's house, I replied. She gave me a puzzled look for a few seconds. Then her eyes lit up with understanding, as if that's a complicated idea as well.
Yeah.
Holy shit, she cried.
The writer's house.
That might be it. Z, you're a genius.
No,
Before I knew what the hell was happening.
Can they not just look it up? Do they not have the whole internet?
She grabbed my face and planted a kiss on me.
Whoa!
She wasn't wearing an Oni headset, so I knew she didn't feel that kiss, but I did. Then she turned to RDJ. Don't go anywhere, she told him. We'll be right back. Then she grabbed me by the arm and pulled me back in the direction of the car. End of chapter.
They're going to fuck in the car.
They're going to fuck right up in the car and then go to the writer's house.
She's going to ride him in the car.
It's crazy how hot that chapter got at the end, don't you think?
Wow.
We're only at 59%.
Maybe the theme for this one is bodily functions.
Maybe not. If I could offer a sort of rebuttal to that.
Because it's all about the heart rate and the shit.
Yeah, I suppose there is. in a way, it's about that. In another way, I think the real theme was about rekindling that beautiful love between Artemis and Wade. That, I don't know, it's the engine that drives my interest in the narrative.
Ultimately, the theme was Shermer itself. And
well, it
John
has been for
Hughes.
quite some time, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I do have to give the episodes of this podcast different titles.
Fuck.
So I can't just keep saying John Hughes.
Damn.
We'll just come up with something tangential related.
Exactly.
I think it just does, again, sort of require pointing out that, we're about 60% into the book, and it seems about 15% of it has just been John Hughes' planet so far.
At least, yeah.
Like that's not, it's not what I would have done.
There are 7 shards.
Yeah.
They have 2.
Is this the second, or are they about to get the second?
They have 2, don't they? They got one from...
Right. So this is shard number 3.
Wait, no, they didn't, did they? Did they get a shard from the Sega Ninja? Or did they get this riddle?
So. I thought they got a shard, but I could be wrong.
Maybe.
I don't really care either way, but in any case,
at
it's
most,
too early
this is
to
the
be
third.
spending this long on what is either shard 2 or 3. There isn't enough book space for us to take this long on everyone. Like, what if the next one is like they go to Planet Spielberg and they spend 8 chapters there as well, just listing all the people who played
fuck
E.T.
the shark. He'll do anything for some doobage.
Shove it right down his fin. It's awful. It's tedious to read, and I imagine to listen to, and that's why the episode has to end. But before it does, we've obviously, our schedule always gets a bit funny in summer, but do bear with us. We're releasing some interesting stuff over on the Patreon by the time this comes out, there will be something out, and there'll be something coming out. Maybe 2 things coming out, if you can imagine that. So there's never been a better time, in some ways, to go over to patreon.com/shamecity and get involved there for your content fix. But what else, Declan, do we have kind of going on in the world of TAS and Bubba? Yeah,
well, there'll be another episode of That's a Shame coming out sometime very soon as well. That's our other podcast that comes out, reportedly every other week,
alternating.
Yeah. So have a little look at Shame City Gang for details on that. You can also join our Discord. That's shame.city/Discord. There's all sorts of people doing crosswords. There's people doing cross stitch. There's people doing all sorts over there. And there's us. We're in there.
Yeah,
that's true. What more could you ask for?
You can message Declan any time of day, and he'll get back to you in 5 minutes.
And I'll get back to you whenever the Discord app decides to tell me. And also we have certainly I have been starting to stream again over at twitch.tv/shamecity or shame.city/Twitch. And that's normally like Monday to Thursdays from like 9, but over the summer, just make sure that you're at least following us on there, and you'll get some notifications if we're going live at crazy times.
And I'll be back streaming one day. I don't know quite when. I'm prepared to. I haven't touched. I told you yesterday. I haven't played a single game since last time I streamed, which is.
You need to man up, is what you need to do.
I'm afraid to confront the digital space. That's what this book has done to me. I think I need to disengage with it entirely.
In case your heart rate goes up and Spotify starts doing all sorts of stuff to you.
Until the next riveting episode, which is still based on John Hughes' planet, I'm afraid to say. I've been Isaac. You've been...
I have been Declan.
More than a feeling.
Bye, guys.